She started calling him her business partner, friendly, casual, too casual. The word landed softly at first, like a napkin on a table, harmless, ignorable, a thing you brush aside when you reach for the glass. But it kept appearing in our evenings, like a moth that had learned the root of our lamp. My business partner said the pitch needs more oomph. My business partner's hilarious. My business partner sent me a podcast, you'd like it. The word partner used to be ours. Then it wasn't. The difference was a breath you can't quite take, the room filled with it. The quiet lengthened between sentences, the way a shadow stretches in late afternoon. The city hummed outside. Inside, she hummed along with a new current. I told myself it was just a season. Work, stress, everyone gets busy, everyone gets quiet. And still, the air at dinner held a new temperature, a fraction cooler. Small things shifted, her phone flipped face down, her laughter kept for the screen, the fingertip checks of time that never included me. The dishes stayed longer in the sink. She used to stack forks face down, spoons face up, a small order in a small world we shared. Now they tangled, silver nested with no logic. She said she was too tired. I nodded. It was true. It was also not the truth that mattered. In the mornings, she drank her coffee standing by the window, half turned away, steam rising like a secret between us. The rain came often that month. It found the loose seal on our bedroom window, a slow tap that should have been easy to fix. It wasn't. The sound nested in my ear at night, the soft patience of water finding its root. I asked about a movie one Friday. She smiled without turning her body fully toward me and said, "Rain check." It was raining. When distance happens, it doesn't announce itself. It collects, in empty chairs, in fork marks on a plate. In a shirt she wears to bed that smells faintly like someone else's cologne that isn't a brand, just a blend of something not ours. The mind is a poor detective and a loyal dog. It wants the old walk, the old voice, the old hand. It bolted toward any reason that let it stay. She said, "We have a big presentation next week." I said, "Do you need anything?" She said, "More time." I gave her my weekend. She gave her hours to the blue light. We traded without saying it. I found the quiet discovery at 2:13 a.m. It wasn't mining. It wasn't snooping. It was something smaller and meaner. A flick of light at the corner of my eye. The phone on the nightstand lighting up with a name not saved. Just a number marked with a little star she'd added to distinguish it in a sea of clients. The preview read, "Miss your laugh already." It wasn't a bullet. It was an arrow that had been in the air for months, finally landing. My breath lifted and didn't quite return. She lay next to me, phone between us, the hum of the refrigerator through the wall, the city a long, low animal breathing. I watched the numbers on the digital clock change, 2:14, 2:15. The rain tapped the window like someone rehearsing a confession. I didn't wake her. I didn't pick up the phone. I stared into the dark and tried to build a version of the world that did not include this. The mind will stack chairs against a door that's already open. At dawn, the apartment held that gray that turns everything to memory. The table, the couch, the lamp, her slippers knocked under the coffee table as if the night had left in a hurry. She woke with a soft sound, the kind people make when they remember their own names. She reached for the phone without thinking, then froze when she saw my eyes open. There are words made for this moment. I had none. She had many. "It's not what you think. It's complicated. I was going to tell you. It just happened." The lines had dust on them. They'd been used in other apartments, other mornings, other gray lights. I stared at the plant on the windowsill, its leaves glossy, healthy, fed by attention I hadn't seen. "How long?" I asked. A sentence with two words that broke into four. "How long?" She swallowed. A tiny movement, but I saw it. "A month," she said. "Maybe two. Maybe." Time became a fogged mirror. My face was behind it, but indistinct. Her lips trembled, then stilled, a control learned in boardrooms. "He's my business partner," she said, and I watched the word break into its parts, business and partner, both now unmoored. She reached out, then stopped halfway. The gesture hung in the room like a bridge that ended over water. "I don't want to hurt you," she said, and I almost laughed. It would have been a cruel sound. I didn't. Instead, I nodded because nodding is what you do when a structure collapses. You witness gravity doing what it always promised to do. She showered. I listened to the water drum the tile. I sat at the table and traced the ring a mug had left last week. It had dried into the wood. I'd sand it out later, or leave it. She came out in a towel and avoided the mirror. In the silence, the apartment showed me its inventory. A smudge of her lipstick on the rim of a wine glass, a sock lost under the radiator, her book open spine down on the arm of the couch, pages bruised. I thought about all the times I'd chosen gentleness with objects and impatience with myself. "I'm sorry," she said. It sounded like someone placing a teacup on a saucer carefully to avoid noise. The echo we lived in wasn't made by sound. It was made by lack of it. She dressed in jeans and a sweater the color of stormwater. At the door, she looked at me fully for the first time that morning. Her eyes were glassy and determined, the strange mix of grief and decision. I need time to think, she said. We both do. The door closed behind her with a click that felt old, like every door I'd ever heard closing gathered inside this one. The apartment waited, the rain softened to a whisper. A siren marched past and faded. I stood in the middle of the living room, and for the first time the shape of the space felt wrong, like furniture set for guests who never arrived. On the kitchen counter, her phone lit again with the same star-marked number. I didn't touch it. I turned away. In the bathroom mirror, my face looked like someone who had just learned a language he would now have to speak: absence. The mind, still loyal, still poor at evidence, tried to bargain. Maybe it was only texts. Maybe it was just laughter. Maybe the body was a boundary still held. Maybe. Then I remembered the lavender that wasn't ours on her sweater last week, and the way she said goodnight like the call had already begun in her head. The rain stopped. The silence it left behind was larger than the sound that preceded it. The day stood there, patient, waiting for me to decide what to do with it. I picked up my keys. I picked up nothing else. The hallway outside our door smelled like bleach and yesterday's umbrellas. On the landing, the light flickered once and steadied. The elevator came slow. I took the stairs. On the second-floor window, condensation had painted translucent maps. I drew a single line through it with my knuckle. Down on the street, the city had already forgiven the storm. The pavement shone. The traffic moved like it had an answer. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I didn't look. I walked toward the small park where we used to cut through to the bakery. The benches were wet, darkened to a richer brown. A man tossed a ball for a dog that didn't care about the weather. At the far corner, a swing set sat empty. The chains held tiny beads of water that trembled and fell, trembled and fell. I sat on the end of a bench and counted 3 slow breaths. Then I called him, the star number. It rang once, twice, 3 times, a voice warm and alert. Hey, you okay? He thought I was her. My mouth was dry. She left, I said. To think, silence, then the soft shuffle of someone standing up from a chair. Who is this? He asked. My name sounded strange in my own mouth when I said it, like a word borrowed from an older version of myself. I think we should talk, I said. The wind lifted, carrying the smell of wet bark, of rain on steel. Meet me, I said, and gave him the cafe near her office. 1 hour, I hung up. My phone felt heavier. The sky split a little, a pale seam. I stood, wiped my palms on my jeans, and headed toward what I knew would change the map of my life, even if the streets kept their names. When I reached the corner and the signal blinked white, I paused with my foot over the curb, weight suspended, a small decision holding a larger one inside it, and wondered, just for a beat, if I would step forward or turn back. Grief doesn't begin with tears. It begins with logistics. The cafe was all glass and steel, and nothing to hide behind. I got there early and sat where the street's reflection could watch me watching the door. The barista asked if I wanted anything. I said water. It arrived in a thick, heavy glass, the kind that makes the table feel sturdier. I wrapped my fingers around it like a handrail in sudden turbulence. He came in with the weather still on his shoulders, hair damp, collar darkened. He scanned the room once and then found me, and in that instant I understood. He had already seen me in a dozen stories she'd told, maybe little ones, maybe sharp ones. He looked like a man who had rehearsed 2 versions of this moment and hated both. He sat without offering his hand. His eyes were kind and guarded, like someone who leaves his blinds open but his door locked. I don't want a scene, he said. His voice was softer than I expected, a partner's voice. I nodded. Neither do I. The city moved past on the other side of the glass, indifferent. A bus hissed. Someone laughed in a scarf. Somewhere a door chimed open, closed. How long? I asked. The question returned, but this time it felt less like an interrogation and more like a timestamp I needed for the file I'd never wanted to keep. He looked at the table. 6 weeks, he said. It wasn't planned. He stopped there, an edge he couldn't trust his foot on. And last night, I asked. His jaw worked once. He decided on honesty. We were together, he said, 2 words that rearranged air. I took a breath through my nose and let it leave the same way. The water glass sweated. I didn't lift it. He leaned in a little, elbows near the rim of his space, as if the table could carry whatever came next. I'm not here to convince you of anything, he said. I'm not here to be the villain in your story. I felt something like pity, quick and unwanted. You already are, I said, and heard the line hang in the cafe like steam that wouldn't fade. He accepted it. Maybe, he said. Maybe we both are. A small mercy. The blame was a big coat. No one wore it well. In the space between us, a plan floated unformed. Revenge lives there like a light in a distant room. It promises coherence. It promises the straightening of bent things. I held it, tested its weight. I saw myself forwarding texts to families, to coworkers, to all the places their names meant something beyond desire. I saw myself breaking a glass in a room just to hear it break. Then I saw the morning after each act, the same apartment, the same plant on the windowsill, the same ring in the wood. None of it fixed the quiet. None of it mended the part of me that had learned to walk around a missing chair. Does she love you? I asked. He closed his eyes the way you do when you try to focus on a far sound. She says she does, he said. And you? He looked up now, and there was the truth without its jacket. I do, he said. Something in me unclenched, not forgiveness, not yet, but the relief of hearing the thing named. People will burn their lives to keep a lie warm. He wasn't doing that. Fine. Then what? The barista's playlist shifted. Something with a piano. I remembered our piano app on the iPad, the way she used to play the same 3 chords and hum off-key on Sundays while I cooked eggs. She'd stopped around week 2 of the maybe. The room sharpened. You're her business partner, I said, saying it differently now, spitting the seam. He nodded once. We built something together, he said. It blurred, he laughed then, a small, helpless sound. We're good at blurring for other people. It's what we sell. Strategy, story, lines that move. He looked genuinely ashamed. It didn't change any facts. I'm not going to drag you, I said. He blinked. Relief touched his face like light through a thin cloud. But you're going to lose, I added. She doesn't stay where guilt sleeps. He flinched, and I realized I knew her better than he did. Intimacy is inventory. You know the weight of someone's self-punishment. You know how long they'll carry it before dropping it behind your couch and calling it destiny. He reached for his cup and found he hadn't ordered one. He lowered his hand. What do you want from me? He asked. This is where the word brutal sits in a story's bones, waiting to be named. But brutality, I learned there, isn't noise, it's clarity. It's what you do with a steady voice and a clean plan, after the crying you haven't done yet. I want you out of her company by month's end, I said. His face changed from a man to a set of calculations. That's not how. I held up a hand. You have 2 choices, I said. Step aside quietly, sell your shares at market to the third partner, take whatever title they give you elsewhere, and put in writing that the decision is unrelated to her and unrelated to me. Or I will email your board a compressed file of every message I've archived from her iCloud since September. He stared. You don't, I smiled, tired. We set up her devices together. She trusted me. I'm old-fashioned, I said. I back up what I love. My voice cracked on love and kept going. He went pale, not because it was illegal, this wasn't a court, and I wasn't here to be righteous, but because he believed me. You'd ruin her, he said quietly. I shook my head. I'd save her name, I said. Yours is the one that disappears from the masthead. He swallowed. The piano song changed to something with a drum that sounded like a clock. Why are you doing this? He asked. Because I know her, I said. Because if you stay in her office, you'll stay in her mouth, in her calendar, in her clothes. And I won't give us the chance to die slowly in a room where we still recognize the wallpaper. He sat back. The rain had started again, thin and precise. He stared through it as if it could give him an answer. I'll talk to the board, he said finally. I'll say I'm leaving for a sabbatical for family reasons. He paused, humorless. I'll make it elegant, I nodded. Elegance was the least he could give us now. You have 12 days, I said. On day 13, the file goes. He looked at my hands, maybe to see if they shook. They didn't. Not then. We stood, no handshake. He pulled his hood up. At the door he turned. You're not who I expected, he said. You're not either, I said. He left. I remained until the water glass lost its chill. I pressed my thumb into the ring of condensation and then lifted it away, a vanished moon. Sleepless nights followed, but not the kind you think. I slept in short, deep plunges, like someone diving in cold water and surfacing too fast. In the hours I was awake, our apartment taught me its new language. The couch had one warm spot and one cold. The bed gathered at my side like a loyal dog. Her toothbrush stood next to mine in a posture I couldn't forgive for its innocence. The smell of coffee in the morning widened the rooms. I often didn't drink it. I held the mug. I let it warm the part of my palm that ached. I found traces of the affair in places only the person who cleans sees. A receipt under the couch for a wine bar we had never visited together. A note in her jacket pocket, Thursday, with a check mark. A photo booth strip tucked into a book she'd told me she'd finished months ago. The two of them pressed into each other in those burstlet frames, their faces trying on versions of joy. I slid the strip back where I found it. I didn't take trophies. I was making something else. Quiet resilience is ordinary. It's choosing the soft towel out of the dryer and the good plate even for toast. It's walking to the river after work and letting the wind decide your pace. It's texting the friend who lives 2 train stops away and telling him not the story but the headline. She cheated, I typed. He called. I let it ring out. Then I typed, I'm okay. It wasn't true yet. It was a direction. On day 5, I changed the Wi-Fi password. On day 6, I turned the framed photo on the bookshelf around so the cardboard backing faced the room, a small, dignified refusal. On day 7, I booked 2 sessions with a therapist whose office smelled like lemon and books that had been loved. Tell me about the first sign, she said. I told her about spoons and forks and the way laughter had moved rooms. She nodded like rain. What do you want? She asked finally. A clean exit, I said, and then I don't know. Breathing that doesn't feel like a decision. On day 8, an email arrived from her company's board secretary, a formal announcement that her partner would be transitioning to a strategic advisory role effective the end of the month. Elegant, I read it twice, then closed my laptop and stared at the ceiling. The apartment's quiet had a different pitch that day, a shade less like hiding, a shade more like a decision that had remembered its own legs. That night she texted, "Can we talk?" The 3 words arrived with the same weight they always carry, too heavy and too light. I typed nothing. I didn't know eloquence. After a minute I replied, "Here, tomorrow." 7. The period put a hand on the conversation and told it to wait at the door. At 6:59, I set 2 mugs on the table and turned off the lamp. The window held a reflection of the room, dim and doubled. When the lock turned, I felt the shift under my feet, the way a house leans when someone crosses the threshold. She stepped in, colder than the hall, eyes searching for the version of me that would save this. I was there. I was also elsewhere now, building a small bridge to a shore I couldn't yet see. She opened her mouth, closed it. We stood in that first silence that can either be a mercy or a weapon. I set the kettle down without turning it on. "Sit," I said softly. She sat. She reached for her phone and thought better of it. Good. The room had earned the right to hold us without screens. Her hands folded, unfolded. She looked at the plant. "It's doing well," she said. "It is," I said. "Say it," I added, and watched the light flicker against her throat as she swallowed. Her lips parted. The first sound of the truth in our home was the small click of her tongue against her teeth, and then the first syllable of my name, held too long, like she wasn't sure if she still had the right to use it. She said my name as if it were both an apology and a request. The kettle hadn't been turned on, but the room felt like the moment water is very close to boiling, quiet, strained, ready to change state. She looked thinner, not in body but in confidence, a person who had been sure of the route and then found the bridge out. She tucked hair behind her ear, an old nervous habit, and forced a smile that failed in the middle. "I made a mess," she said. The understatement was the first honest thing all month. She started to cry then, quietly. No breathless heaving, no collapse, just a steady overflow that she wiped with the heel of her hand like she was fixing mascara that wasn't there. "I thought I wanted something," she said. "What was it?" I asked. She shook her head, a small, angry gesture at herself. "To feel new," she said, "to feel seen without history." The words did not surprise me. We had been married 5 years. "History is both a gift and a gravity." "You felt new," I said. "For 6 weeks," she flinched. "Grief is arithmetic." She told me about the first time, the late night, the wine, the joke that landed too well the moment the room tipped. She told me about the kiss in the elevator, the way it felt like stepping into a warm, wrong room. She told me about the morning after, the way she looked at me pouring coffee and thought, "I can't undo this." There was no bravado left. The bragging I'd heard, the way she had said business partner to friends with an extra shine, had been bluster. Inside our home, it died in the dull light of the lamp we'd bought on sale. I listened, not to forgive. To understand the shape of the wound I would carry, you have to map it if you plan to walk around it without falling in. "Why did you keep it?" I asked. "If you knew after the first time," she stared at the table, at the ring the mug had left. "Because ending it would have meant telling you why," she said. "And telling you why would have meant telling me why. I wasn't brave enough." The honesty made something in my chest ache and unclench at once. I had been waiting for a villain. I got a person. "I talked to him," I said. She looked up, alarmed. "What did you do?" I told her in clean sentences about the cafe and the choices and the 12 days. Her face moved through several weathers, shock, anger, a flash of admiration she didn't hide fast enough, and then a soft, tired grief. "You didn't have to protect me," she said. "I wasn't protecting you," I said. "I was protecting the part of me that might have waited for you in a room where he was only down the hall." She nodded, a small, honest nod. "Thank you," she said, and then winced. "God, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that." "You can say what's true," I said. She told me she'd ended it that morning. "For real," she said. "No loops left open. No coffee as colleagues." I told him I would leave the company if he didn't step down. He said he already had. She looked at me with new attention. "You really did that?" I didn't feel proud. I felt like someone who had moved a piece of furniture that had been blocking the door. "I did that," I said. "It doesn't fix us," she said. "No," I said, "it doesn't." We sat with that. The clock on the stove blinked its wrong time from the last power outage. 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock, a mechanical stutter that would have irritated me last month. Now it felt appropriate. Our time had been blinking wrong for weeks. She took a napkin from her coat pocket and folded it into smaller squares. "I want to come home," she said. The words were simple. The request was not. Home is not a place, not really. It's a set of agreements kept in the same drawer. I'm not sure what home is now, I said. She nodded. Me neither. She reached for my hand across the table and stopped halfway. The gesture hung again the bridge. I let it hang. I did not offer mine. She noticed. Pain flickered, not anger. The pain of understanding that there are prices, even for the return. What do you want me to do? She asked. The question landed like a small bird, hesitant, ready to flee. You can't fix this by doing, I said. You have to sit in it. With me or not. The or not was a mercy and a knife. We set rules, not like a contract, not like a marriage guidance blog, but like two people in a lifeboat deciding who rows when. No late nights, no phones at the table. Transparency not as punishment, but as scaffolding for something that couldn't stand on its own yet. Therapy together, therapy apart. A month of separate rooms. She asked for the couch. I gave her the bed. She shook her head, stubborn. I'll take the couch, she said. I need to know how hard this is. She went quiet. I need to feel it. At the doorway of the bedroom, she paused and turned. Do you still love me? The answer was ready. Yes, in a shape that had changed, a shape that might never fit the same doorframe, but yes. I said nothing. Sometimes love is safer in silence than in sound. She nodded as if I had answered anyway. She went to the couch and lay down without undressing, boots still on, a person ready to flee if the night demanded it. In the days after her return, we became careful. Careful with words, with where we set our cups, with what we looked at, and for how long. Careful with laughter, letting it out in small pieces, testing its edges. The morning light found new routes through our blinds, landing on her face and mine in patterns that turned our skin into maps. We learned to read them. In the evenings, we walked, not holding hands, not apart. The distance was a third thing we carried between us like an invisible piece of furniture we refused to put down yet. She offered details I hadn't asked for. Some I accepted. Some I held up between two fingers and let drop into the space under the couch where lost things go. I didn't need everything. I needed the geometry, the shape of the lie, the angle of the exit. She cooked once poorly, overly salted, and we ate in gratitude anyway because ceremony mattered. She laughed at herself and then looked at me quickly to see if she was allowed to. She was. The laugh sat in the air like a small bird returned to a familiar wire. It didn't stay long. It left. It promised to learn the route again. Guilt moved through the apartment like a new roommate, loud in the morning, quiet in the afternoon, banging cabinets at odd hours. I watched her navigate it. She apologized without theatrics. She apologized while washing dishes, while tying her shoelaces, while standing at the window looking at nothing and everything. She didn't beg. I didn't punish. We didn't perform for an audience that didn't exist. The work was small and private and often invisible, like muscles relearning to fire after a long rest. One night, rain returned. We turned off the lamps early and let the dark be what it was, not ominous, just honest. She sat on the floor with her back against the couch. I sat 3 feet away, backs nearly touching, the kind of closeness that doesn't touch but hums anyway. I keep thinking about the first time we moved into this place, she said. The way the rooms looked too big. We grew into them, I said. We did, she said. We can again. The hope in her voice was a fragile thing, a match head. I didn't blow on it. I also didn't shield it with my hands yet. It needed to learn its own weather. The next morning, she left early for a meeting. I stood at the window and watched our street wake. The neighbor in 3B with the white dog, the kid with the too big backpack and the fierce walk, the guy who jogs in the rain because he likes the way the city is emptier. My phone buzzed. A text, I'm sorry. Then another. I love you, then a third, I'll prove it. I typed and erased. I settled on, be kind to us to yourself. It wasn't an absolution. It was a line on a map. When she came home that night, she carried a bag of groceries, a bouquet of small white flowers I couldn't name, and a look that said she had not cried in any bathroom today. The flowers looked like apology and promise and morning light. She set them in a jar because we never bought a vase. The jar worked. Things can be beautiful without the right name. We ate quietly. We washed dishes together and did not talk about the time she had washed dishes after a different dinner in a different apartment. We left that ghost alone. Later, in the bedroom doorway, she paused again, a habit now. Are you okay? She asked. The question was too big for the hour. I gave it a smaller answer. I'm breathing. She nodded. She began to turn. Wait, I said. She looked back, eyebrows up. Your pillow, I said, and handed it to her. Our fingers touched, an accident with intention inside it. Sparks are real. They are also just tiny chemical facts. We didn't make more of it than it was. After she settled on the couch, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. The hum of the refrigerator, the hiss of the old radiator, the low traffic, it all folded into a sound that had begun to feel like a lullaby again. My last thought before sleep was a memory of her saying partner years ago, with wonder, before we worked and blurred and forgot. The word had been ours once. I closed my eyes on it, not to claim it back, but to remember the weight of it in my mouth when it meant only us. In the blue hour before dawn, I woke suddenly, certain I had heard my name. The apartment was quiet. Somewhere, water tapped a sink. I held my breath and listened, the way you listen for a baby's cry in another room, ready to move, ready to stay, unsure which love the morning would ask of me. Morning arrives gently when you've rehearsed it. The light at 6 was a soft hand on the shoulder. The city moved in mumbles. I made coffee and stood by the window the way she had in those weeks when we were learning the shape of distance. Steam rose and found my face. The plant on the sill had pushed a new leaf overnight, small and cocked like an ear. Sometimes life does that without permission. It's improper and correct. She walked in, hair down, sweater inside out in that way she does when her mind had slept hard. She looked younger in the morning. Not years, just weight shed for an hour. I dreamt we were moving, she said, voice low with sleep. We couldn't find the plates. We'd eat with our hands, I said. She smiled. A real one, no effort. She poured her coffee. We stood in parallel. The smell filled the gap between us. I've been thinking, she said. We both laughed at that. Too much thinking had been done. I know, she said, acknowledging the joke, the truth. I've been thinking about forgiveness. She leaned her hip against the counter the way she does when she's about to say something that asks something. People talk about it like a door you walk through, she said. I think it's a path. Some days there's mud. I nodded. Some days it's paved, I said. Some days it's fog. I don't want to rush you, she said. I also don't want to make a home in this waiting room. The honesty surprised us both. She took a breath. I can leave, if that's what lets you breathe right. The offer wasn't theater. It sat between us like a folded coat, useful, warm, not a threat. I sipped my coffee. The radiator gave one of its old man sighs. Leaving isn't the only way to give me air, I said. But it might be the kindest to both of us. We stood with that. The word us had a different geometry now. It included two separate futures. It included kindness that didn't equal staying. She set her mug down carefully, exactly on the ring she'd made yesterday, as if matching pattern to pattern would make departure neater. If I go, she said, I won't come back with a key in my hand and a story about clarity. If you go, I said, go like a person who learned something. Her eyes filled and didn't spill. She nodded. We spent the morning doing what people do when they love and are careful. Laundry, emails, the emptying of a drawer. She held a sweater to her face and laughed at herself for crying at cotton. I labeled a box with a pen that was running out of ink. The quiet wasn't hollow. It was full of small decisions. At noon, we ate toast with honey and didn't try to make meaning out of it. Afternoon folded itself politely around our work. We didn't look for messages. We didn't listen for sirens. We let the apartment be a place, not a test. Near evening, rain returned, soft, practiced. She stood at the window and leaned her forehead against the glass, the way a child listens to the world. I'm sorry, she said again, but differently now, not a plea, not a confession, just a description of weather. I know, I said. The light in the room shifted, from gray to that thin silver that arrives before lamps. She turned. Will you hate me? She asked. It was the first time she had asked for that kind of future. No, I said. Hate is a room with no windows. I want the ones that open. She smiled in grief. You always wanted light, she said. You always wanted quiet, I said. We built both, she said. We did, I said, and we can again. Just maybe not together. The sentence hung like a bridge and this time found the other shore. She set her mug in the sink and washed it, dried it, put it back in the cabinet. The ceremony was small and complete. She went to the bedroom and packed a duffel. She moved through the space like a person who was grateful for the floor. I watched from the doorway, not to track, to witness. At the door, she turned the way she had every night these past weeks. Habit can be a kind mercy. Do you want to say anything? She asked. I thought of every line in every movie, the big pronouncements and the small stabs. I thought of the many I had rehearsed in showers and stairwells and sleep. None were true enough. Be gentle with your name, I said. She nodded. You too, she said. We stood stupidly for a second, waiting for something ceremonial to arrive, the bell, the music, the sign. Nothing did. Life is rude like that. She reached for the knob. Wait, I said, and crossed the room to the plant. I pinched off the small, new leaf and handed it to her. For your jar, I said, so it learns the light elsewhere. She laughed and cried at the same time. She tucked the leaf into her pocket like a note. The door closed. The apartment recalibrated its weight. The silence after was not empty. It was a wide field. I turned off the kitchen light and stood in the living room as the rain laid a soft blanket over the city. The chair across from me was empty. It did not accuse, it simply was. I sat and let the quiet have my breath for a while. Then I stood and did a thing I had been avoiding. I turned the framed photo back around. We were laughing in it, heads tipped toward each other, eyes closed in that way joy sometimes demands. I didn't put it back on the shelf. I set it in the drawer, careful, not as an exile, but as a page placed between others in a book I still loved, even if I would not reread that chapter soon. Morning light the next day came like a release, a pale, forgiving wash over the table, the floor, the pen with the failing ink. I made coffee for one and discovered the taste had not changed. I texted my friend 2 train stops away. It's done, he sent back a heart and a dumb meme that made me laugh aloud in the empty room. Laughter echoed differently now, but it did not sound wrong. I opened the window. The air smelled like rain and something clean, like laundry hung in sun. Somewhere in the building, a child laughed. Somewhere else, someone cursed at a sink. Life continued its rude, generous business. I took the plant down and repotted it in a bigger container. Its roots had circled themselves, looking for space. I loosened them gently, apologizing aloud, a silly thing that felt right. More room, I said. I set it back on the sill. The city exhaled. I did too. Forgiveness, I realized, was not a single act aimed at her. It was a practice aimed at the part of me that wanted to turn every ache into a map of blame. I could set the map down. I could walk a different street. In my pocket, the old Wi-Fi password, the photo booth strip, the receipt, all the small relics of a story that had ended, waited for a decision. I didn't burn them. I didn't shrine them. I slid them into a manila envelope and labeled it with a word that finally felt correct: past. I put the envelope on the top shelf of the closet, where the winter scarves wait for the right cold. They would live there quiet until quiet did what it always does, changed into something else. At the window, the rain slowed, then broke. The street shone. The light found new roots through the glass and made small galaxies on the floorboards. I stood in them. I said her name once, not to summon, not to punish, just to honor a story that had carried me to the edge, and then I let it go. The word thinned in the air, then disassembled, then disappeared. The room remained. The chair remained, the morning remained. And in the soft hum of the city, in the smell of coffee cooling, in the quiet footstep of forgiveness crossing the room, I felt something almost like peace draw a chair for itself and sit down with me, not to replace what was lost, but to make space for what would come. Not to replace what was lost, but to make space for what would come.